Good morning, everyone. Bill Coleman here, welcoming you to our mapping session. And just want to welcome you back to the meetings and hope you're proceeding on your surveys to get those underway and working closely with Nancy on that. Today, it's going to be a lot about mapping. And I think I noted last time how important mapping is now to broadband planning. We're getting down, in the past, we used to think about mapping at the county level or at the census block level. And that's what the FCC used for years to determine whether places were served with broadband. And so a census block in a rural place can be several miles across. And the FCC would say, well, if one house in that location in that census block had broadband service, the provider could count that census block as being served. And of course, that was at a much lower level, the 25.3 download upload speeds. Today, we're looking at mapping at the address level. And obviously, that's a much bigger challenge, certainly a much higher standard to try and achieve, and just brings into all kinds of discussion about what is really served and what is service. Just because I think they generally say that if a provider can offer service within 2 weeks, then they can claim that area as being served. And of course, maps, it's always the one of the first things when we show people the maps, they say, oh man, that is not the reality of life in our community in terms of the service levels. And so we're going to hear a lot more about mapping today. And so we're going to start off, it's really a two-part presentation today. First is John Kostelnick is going to talk about the process that Illinois State does to do mapping of a variety of kinds. And John's going to explain that. And then we're going to go to Shabika Agarwal, and she's going to talk about the Illinois maps and really the whole challenge process and trying to get your maps as straight as we can in the next 45 to 60 days, I think. So with that, welcome, John, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Bill. And good morning, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? And can you see my slides all right?
Yes, and yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So as Bill mentioned, I'm at Illinois State University, and I want to acknowledge my colleague here, Jonathan Thane, as well. We just started our semester yesterday, and unfortunately, John's teaching this morning and wasn't able to join us, but he's very much my collaborator and has contributed a lot to this this work that I'll present here on his behalf. And in addition, this is truly is a project that has involved the brain trust of lots of people and lots of organizations. I want to give credit to the Illinois Soybean Association, Todd Main, especially for being the person who planted the seeds, if you will, to use a bad analogy for the maps that we're going to present here. We got some funding from the Illinois Innovation Network to do this, and we've been very fortunate to partner with Benton Institute and Bill and all the others on the Broadband Breakthrough leadership team as we've, sort of smoothed out the maps that we've created here. So just a little bit of background. So as Bill mentioned, you'll hear from Shabika as well, lots of different types of maps. Our team at ISU has two specific types of maps that we have created and are creating for each of your counties. So we've got some things that we're going to share with you over the course of the workshop. You will get these maps that we're showing you for your particular counties to use in your broadband planning efforts. And so as we know, maps can be very powerful ways of visualizing lots of different aspects of broadband, thinking about, advocacy efforts, planning efforts, and everything in between there. So the two types of maps that we've developed, we call these Mapping Tool 1 and Mapping Tool 2. Mapping Tool 1 is designed to estimate future agricultural gains that might happen in rural counties if broadband were to be increased, if coverage were to be increased. So you can kind of think of this as what if broadband were to be, it fully expanded in my county, what does that mean for agriculture? You know, how much agricultural gain might we expect? And so it's kind of a way of thinking about, you know, the return on investment, right? We invest in broadband. What are we going to gain from this agriculturally? So we're trying to estimate that. The second one is a little bit more technical. It is dealing with creating maps of what we call vertical assets in your community. So think of a vertical asset as just a tall structure on the rural landscape. So it might be a water tower, might be a grain silo, a grain head, anything like that. Now, why are those things important? Well, if we can map those, we can consider those as tall structures that might be used as the broadband infrastructure is built out for fixed wireless. So you can kind of think of these are obviously good things that have good line of sight, and but knowing where those are at is and mapping those is important. So let me just I'll kind of walk you through these mapping tools, show you what they look like, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of an idea too about how we do this. I know we've got some GIS folks with us, and I want you to, as you know, as you use these maps, you know, I think it's helpful to know, how did we get these? How did we create these? What are sort of the, you know, the limitations and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about mapping tool number one here. So again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to quantify the agricultural gain that could come in a county if broadband, when broadband potential is fully realized. And so let me just give kind of a simple sort of a rationale for how we go about this. So, you know, you can think about this. When broadband is increased, when you have better broadband, more reliable broadband in a rural area, what that leads to is better ability for farmers to do precision agriculture. Obviously, you need good internet for the farmers to be able to do this. So if we have better broadband, we can do more precision ag. And so what precision ag means, of course, is it's been well established that that leads to better yields. So we get better yields per acre of land. Better yields, of course, means more money in the rural economy for that particular county. And so that's what we're trying to do here. And the question is, well, how much? How much, if you invest in broadband, how much can we expect in a given county? Now, in addition to this, there's other gains as well. You can think about not only better production, but farmers with precision ag, they can use fewer fertilizers, pesticides, so reduce costs there. You can look at, you know, reduced labor costs. There are environmental benefits here as well. So there are a number of gains. We focus here on the yield part of the equation. So, you know, the increased yields. There's a study that was done by USDA a few years ago. And what the study basically concluded was that for corn and soybeans, we get about a 3.6% gain in corn and a 3.8% gain in soybeans if we double the number of households that go from essentially unserved broadband coverage to a higher level, so increased coverage. So these are the numbers that we use in the analysis that we do. Obviously, corn and soybeans are a big part of the agricultural economy in many counties in Illinois. So let me just show you what an output map looks like, and then we'll kind of break this down and show you how we get this. So this is McLean County. This is where I'm at here in Bloomington Normal at Illinois State. They were a participant in the last broadband breakthrough cohort. You see two maps here on your screen. One is unserved areas, and the other is underserved areas. So both of those, of course, you know, the broadband capability is not ideal for precision ag. The green is soybeans, and the yellow is corn. So this is for the 2021 growing season. So you see corn and soybeans in the unserved areas, corn and soybeans in the underserved areas. And the idea is that these are areas that if broadband was better, we could expect more gains per acre of land. There's a table down here, and basically what we're doing is we're just quantifying some things. So you'll see we've got unserved and served areas here, both for corn on the left and then soybeans on the right. We've calculated the number of acres of corn and soybeans for the unserved and underserved areas. We estimate the number of bushels that is currently. And then if you look under the additional production, this is that 3.6 and 3.8% gain. So this is what we expect we could gain. And then under the value, that's sort of the market value of those crops. So if you want to just boil this down, if you look at McLean County here, it's about a $12 million we estimate gain per growing season with better broadband. So we're trying to kind of come up with some numbers or trying to quantify what this actual gain looks like. So let me just kind of walk you through briefly kind of how we do this. We take the broadband access maps, some of the maps that Shabika will be talking about. So when we did this analysis, this was for 2021. What you're looking at here is unserved areas in the blue, underserved in kind of that greenish color, and then the very light green of the served areas in the state. You'll notice we need to know where the croplands are, and particularly where corn is grown and where soybeans are grown. And so we get that from the USDA. They have this thing called the cropland data layer. It's basically a map of cropped areas that they do every year. They release it so the current one that we have right now is for 2022 growing season. The new one will be coming out. It usually comes out in early March. So the 2023 will be coming out here pretty soon. But it's an awesome map to look at to see. And it changes every year as crop rotations and things like that happen. So I'll just kind of walk you through McLean County. So here's what we do in the GIS. We take a county like McLean County. For here, we'll just show you the underserved areas. So, and we do this for the unserved as well. But here's the underserved areas in McLean County in that teal color. Here is our cropland. So again, corn in the yellow, soybeans in the green, and then we've got other things in the other colors there. And so what we're interested in is that intersection. Where are the corn and soybeans in the underserved areas? And so that's what you see on this map. We've isolated it to just those areas. Now, what I can do then in my GIS is I can start to do these calculations. I can first calculate the number of acres, so about 140-some thousand for both corn and soybeans. What I can do next is I can estimate how many bushels that is. So these are the county averages, so about 205 bushels an acre for corn and about 66 for soybeans. And so if I multiply that out, there's my bushels for in that area. Now, for the additional production, what I do then is we multiply it. We take that 3.6 and 3.8%. We multiply that out. This is my expected gain. So about 1 million additional bushels of corn and about 368,000 of soybeans. Then what I could do is I can take the market price. So for $5.40 for corn, $10.69 for soybeans. This is back in 2021, and that gives me my value. Okay. And so then I kind of just, do that for the unserved areas as well. And I can come up with my estimates. So that's, very briefly is kind of, I think it's important when you're looking at these maps, to know that we don't just kind of come up with these numbers out of thin air, of course. That's sort of the rationale and how the calculations that we do. So a little bit just about, some assumptions, limitations, that type of thing. We're assuming here that farmers would adopt precision agriculture. And there's a lot of surveys that have been done that suggest that many farmers would in fact do that. When we're doing these calculations again, we are simply including additional yields for corn and soybeans, okay? So things like reduced costs for fertilizers and pesticides, reduction in labor, all of those things are not included in this. It'd be great to, develop this model further, to quantify some of those things, those additional gains, but we're not doing those here. This is just for corn and soybeans also. So, you may be a county, have other agricultural activities that are going on, if you're up in Northwest Illinois, maybe some dairying or something like that. Those are other things that could be added into this. And keep in mind, this is for one growing season alone. Okay, so there's a multiplier effect, multiple growing seasons. One of the things that we haven't done and that we wanted to is to sort of validate these estimates, to actually take a county and see, what is the actual gains versus kind of what we're predicting here. So we haven't done that yet. Our best guess is that these estimates are probably pretty conservative. given that there are many things that we are not accounting for. So again, that's just our best estimate, is that we're probably being conservative in what these actual gains might be. But nonetheless, gives us a way of wrapping our arms around kind of what those dollars might look like for the investment. Okay, so let me transition here and talk a little bit about mapping tool number 2. So this one deals with creating maps of vertical assets in every county. And so you can kind of think of this, you may have grain bins and water towers and all of those types of things in your own community. And further on in the broadband breakthrough workshops, you'll hear a lot about things like the different broadband technologies, including, what is known as sort of the middle mile concept, which basically is a way of tying in the first mile, the internet backbone, to your last mile, to the broadband on the farm. And what can be done is we can use vertical assets to help with this. Obviously, think of tall structures. The benefit they have is there's good line of sight across the rural landscape for a wireless signal. These are also structures that already exist. They're not new towers that need to be constructed. So how can we leverage those existing vertical assets to build out the broadband infrastructure? Well, it starts, of course, with knowing where those vertical assets are. And you maybe likely know where a lot of them are in your community. But our objective here was to make a map to show where these are at. Now, the FAA does have some of these already mapped. You might, imagine, when you get to places near airports and things like that, they want to know where tall structures are. This is McLean County, just to give you an idea. So the blue dots are the FAA vertical assets. Typically, I think it's a threshold of 200 feet or something. So they're very tall. So a lot of times grain bins and things like that aren't going to show up on these. So that's kind of a limitation. The red dots here are additional vertical assets that we identified through our mapping approach for the county. So again, just let me give you a quick walk through how this is done. What we do is we use a technology called LiDAR, which basically creates a 3D surface of the map of the Earth. We have LiDAR available for all counties in Illinois, so that's a great resource to use. And essentially what we do is we extract tall structures from that LiDAR data. And the way that this is done is, so here we've got some grain bins here, and you can kind of see them. This is an aerial imagery looking down on top. This is what the LiDAR looks like. So this is it's a three-dimensional map of the surface. Areas that are taller, higher up, are in the white, and then the lower areas, the fields, you'll see are in the black. Now, what we do is we can also then find what we call the bare earth elevation. So imagine if you took all the structures and everything off the earth, what would the actual elevation look like? That's what this one is right here. So we get that from LiDAR also. And essentially what we do is we just subtract those. So this is the result. So this gives me the height of these objects. So you'll see here the highest object is about 129 feet in this particular area. And so just another way of looking at that, here I've got them classified. So anything above 80 feet is in the dark blue right here. So we've got all these grain bins isolated here. So we can not only know where the vertical assets are, but we can get their height as well within half a foot or so of vertical accuracy. So that's a nice thing as well. And then we just map them out as points, as you can see right here. One of the big challenges in doing this is trees. We don't want trees are tall, but we don't want them to consider them as vertical assets. So we have to remove trees as well. And what we also do is we remove vertical assets that are very close to forested areas or large tree canopy structure, things like that as well. So we have a way of doing that as well. We get some other satellite imagery that is good at detecting trees, and we basically just remove those from what we're doing. So let me just show you very quickly what the vertical assets look like. Here is a map. It's an interactive web map. And we create these for every county. So you can kind of go in and find vertical assets in your particular community. So I'm just going to kind of do a real quick switch over here, and I can show you what it looks like. So this is one for Hancock County. That was one of the counties last year. You can kind of see it. So it's an interactive map here. You can click on a vertical asset. You could see what the height is. You've got satellite imagery you can put underneath here as well. The other thing I wanted to show you was what you can also do is we can filter out vertical assets by height threshold. So here, what you're seeing is these are all the vertical assets that are 50 feet or higher. So if you want to look for a specific threshold, a minimum height, you can do that as well with this interactive map. And then what we also have here as well is there is a catalog that kind of just shows different drain bins and silos and kind of what the average height of these is here as well. So that's in here as well. So with that, I'm going to kind of, I want to lastly just share you some resources for all of you. I have a Google Drive link here, and this will be active throughout the Broadband Breakthrough workshops. I'll put this into the chat here if you want to explore it. And basically, you'll see some of these resources. Now, we are still working on things, so I will give you updates as we kind of move along here when things are available. But let me just kind of give you a brief tour of what's there. We are getting very, very close. I've got drafts of the agricultural production maps for every county. You'll see those in the folder there. There is one thing I am filling out still. I'm waiting on the latest numbers for the crop production, so that you'll see the value field is the very last thing that I haven't filled in yet, but I will do so. I hope to get those very, very soon, and we'll update those. But nonetheless, each county has one of those maps that is there for now. For the vertical assets maps, we are working on those as well. I have a team of students. These take a little bit longer to process the LiDAR data and to get those, but I will give you updates as we move through the weeks here, and we'll let you know when it is available. But for now, if you want to play around, these are the links. There's a document in the Google Drive folder that has links for past counties, and you can play around with those if you would like to do so. So again, if we just go back to the folder here, what you'll see is if you go into the corn and soybeans, there's where the maps are at, and then vertical assets, that's where the links to past counties. So you can kind of use that to visualize, what this would look like, and maybe think about how you might use those. And again, we'll let you know as soon as your county is available. Last thing I want to mention, we have some reports in there as well. Nancy mentioned this report that came out recently by Benton in her email. This talks a little bit more about the tools and how counties use these tools in the previous Broadband Breakthrough workshop last spring. If you want to dive into more nitty-gritty about what we are doing and the methods of we're using, I've also put in the folder our reports for our grant project. So you'll see again, if you just go into the reports folder, those are there as well. So this would be, I would only recommend this if you really want to know more specifics. One thing that we have in there as well, if you are somebody who does GIS, or if you want to tinker with this yourself, we also have step-by-step instructions for how we've done all these maps. So those are available in those reports as well. I know that was a lot, but I will hang around, of course, through the different sessions. I'll pop into some of the rooms today as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask anytime. And there's my contact info as well. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, John. I think I think the purpose and the value of this work that Illinois State does for us is the eye-opening numbers on the corn and bean production. I think there's county commissioners, when they see that kind of additional production value and the amount of money that can flow into a county as a result, I think is really impressive. And then, but we've also the tower locations. And of course, most people come into this thinking, hey, we want all fiber and everything. But we know that fixed wireless is a useful technology. And we found that in other places, they've really used those tower locations, working with especially some of the smaller fixed wireless providers as a gateway to getting those networks deployed much faster, much easier. And that's been very helpful for these ISPs to deliver service. We link this then with the community survey where we ask the farmers, would you be willing to host equipment on your property? And so we not only have tower, and we ask how tall those structures are. So we've got a good database of people, names and phone numbers and email addresses. We've got the locations. That really is can also be almost a preliminary network design for folks to move forward. And anything you can do to reduce the cost of deployment for these smaller providers in particular, I think it goes a long way. So thank you, John. Good. The next presenter is Shabika Agarwal, and she's with the Illinois Broadband Lab and the Office of Broadband. Welcome, Shabika.
Hi, Bill. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Good morning. So as Bill mentioned, going to be discussing a lot about all the mapping resources that we have available out there. As we were starting out the session, Bill gave like a really good introduction for how maps have changed over the course of, the past few years, from the state maps to the FCC maps, how it's gotten more location level. So we'll definitely be discussing some of that. And then we'll also get into the BEAD challenge process. And because, your communities are already invested, you're working on the survey and outreach, or some easy ways on, how to get involved and all the information you need on that aspect. So just going over the different components that we'll be covering in the presentation today. We'll start with the Illinois Broadband Map and the FCC National Broadband Map. So what are the two, how they're different, things like that. We'll do a quick Illinois Broadband Map demo. We'll get into the basics of the BEAD challenge process and then specifically discuss the BEAD speed test challenge because, the speed test element is also going to be part of your surveys. And so how you can effectively communicate that with your communities so that as you are, spreading out that survey, you're going to also get some good engagement in the BEAD challenge process itself. Then we have mapping packets prepared for all of the counties. So I'll have my colleague Gong towards the end really describe how we've laid it out and what is all the information that's contained in those. And we'll have Q&A towards the end. So we have a lot to cover, and this is going to be a test for me to see if I can do all of this in like 30 minutes. So all the best to me. Starting off with the Illinois Broadband.
If we go long, that's okay, Shabika.
Okay, thank you. That takes off a little bit of pressure. Okay, starting off with the broadband map and the FCC maps that we have available. So the Illinois broadband map and how there have been changes in data representation from when we started out. So the first set of maps that we released were in June 2021. This is when all of the data was in polygons. And back then, FCC basically had data at the census block level. So as Bill mentioned, if there's just even one house in a census block that had access, the entire block was marked as served. So a lot of potential for overstatement. So at that time, the Illinois broadband map was certainly more granular. It had more recent data because we had like that 6-month outreach to providers, and we were constantly updating, releasing an update every 6 months. So, with timely updates. Since the FCC Fabric and the FCC Broadband Map, so this was pretty much November 2022. This is when we had the Fabric and the FCC maps. So this is when we get to like the location level data. This is also when Illinois switched to locations, just because it was, again, more granular than the area level data that we were sharing. There are challenges around the accuracy of the Fabric. So the state is certainly engaged in the location challenges and the availability challenges to help the federal map also like improve in terms of all the locations that they've identified on the map. There are instances, especially in rural areas, where like, some of these barns and farm structures are marked as broadband serviceable locations, which might not necessarily need direct access to broadband. So there's some kind of more locations, and then there are also instances when locations might be missing from that map, but it's getting better and better. And that's essentially the framework that Illinois broadband map is also using at this point in time. It's important because this is what is going to be used for the BEAD funding, if you're not aware, broadband equity access and deployment funding for infrastructure. This is going to be the database that's going to be used to identify those unserved and underserved locations and how that funding is going to be distributed across the state. So since June 2023, then we basically have on the map, and we'll go and look at it. It's this location data, but just so that we can make more sense of it at county levels and regional levels, we have aggregated that data into hex bins. So if there's like 10 locations within a particular hex bin, it's all aggregated. And when we hover over it, it essentially tells us what's the coverage. So now that the state maps and the FCC maps pretty much have a similar cycle for data collection and data release, we can really think of the Illinois broadband map as, a means of validating the data that's coming from providers, the data that they're submitting to the FCC, the data that they're sharing with us. So that's one way we can see at it. And the other thing is everything that has to do with the Connect Illinois Infrastructure Grant Program. This is the resource because it has a lot of information about eligibility and where access is, where it's not. So we'll take a closer look at some of that as well. Before we do that, again, some differences between the Connect Illinois grant program and the BEAD program and how, the eligibility looks different. And hence, using the Illinois broadband map more specifically for Connect Illinois grant planning. And then we have some new resources coming out for more clarity on eligibility for BEAD. So firstly, the difference between the two is the technology types that define eligibility. So with Connect Illinois, we were only looking at wireline locations. If a location has access to wireline, we were considering that as served. If it has any kind of fixed wireless, that would be eligible for funding. But with BEAD, it's a little different. It considers wireline and licensed by rule fixed wireless technologies. And again, I know there has been a Broadband 101 initially, but I still have a link to the different technology types. So if you want to just get some clarity on what these different technologies mean, there's more information there. But some aspects of the fixed wireless are also considered as ineligible for BEAD. That's one main difference. And so as I mentioned, we have the eligibility map for the Connect Illinois program on the Illinois broadband map. And we are developing a resource that's the BEAD challenge map, which is going to specifically clarify all of those locations that will be categorized as unserved and underserved and hence eligible for BEAD funding. We are expecting to release this as early as January 22. So that's next week. And yeah, if there's a shift, we'll keep you posted, but that's the tentative release date that we have in mind as of now. In terms of speed thresholds, that has been the same for both of these programs. So any location that has less than 25/3 is going to be unserved, and any location between 25/3 and 100/20 would be considered underserved. So with that, with some of those differences laid out earlier, now jumping into the Illinois broadband map demo. And again, I do have some slides here so that later when you're looking at it, we basically have a lot of tabs on the map. So this just, lists some of the important layers on there. So when you're looking at this presentation later or trying to play around the map yourself, this could be a good resource in terms of understanding, which tab to really go to. So for this presentation, directly going into the map at this point. Okay, so this is what the map looks like. We have quite a few tabs here, starting off with access and general. So general basically has all of these different anchor institutions. Again, it's universities, libraries, schools, and all of that. When we click, we do get a location of all of these. These could, again, be good places to reach out to, for survey outreach and things like that. So you can use this as a resource. This is slightly different from the community anchor list that the state is developing as part of the initial proposal, volume 1. So we'll have that updated list coming out again next week. So that is also something that can be challenged as part of the Be Challenge process. Just wanted to highlight that. On here in the general tab, we have also have some few important, boundary layers. For the purpose of this demo, we're going to be using the county boundaries. And when we click on any of the counties, we basically get statistics for, what is access looking like based on the different speeds. And then there's 2 categories for each. So if it says 25/3 locations, that essentially is all the technologies, so wireline and licensed and unlicensed. And then we have the 25/3 wireline. So this would be just the wireline technologies, which is cable, DSL, and fiber. So we have that for the different speed tiers, 25/3, 100/20, 100 symmetrical, and gigabit. So again, depends on the county's goals and vision for the kind of broadband they need, and they can look at that respective statistic here for any of the counties. We have this available at also the school district level. So if that is something that's of interest to you, that is also available. And then we also have that at legislative district levels. So one way of getting to that data is through the query tool here. So we have locate by school district, and just selecting me at this point. Yeah, so that takes you to the school district, and again, similar kind of statistics available at that level. If they're going to be having conversations with a legislative leader, a representative, or senator, and they're interested in statistics for their specific district, then that's again a possibility. So here, looking at the House district, just gonna type one number here so that we get to it. So yeah, for district 12, which covers most of southern Illinois, we also have statistics. So depends on who you're really talking to, what kind of statistics would they be interested in. So there are different ways of looking at these access numbers. So that is what I wanted to start with, the query tool being very important and can be helpful in looking at this data at different levels. Now getting back to the access tab. So we have our county layers turned on. Just for the sake of example, let's look at 100/20 wireline. So as I mentioned, we now have hex bins on the map. So as we zoom in, the size of the hex bin it gets smaller and it gets more granular. And when we actually click on these, we get a sense of how many locations within this hex bin are served by the particular speeds and technology that we've selected. So in this case, 100% of the locations within this hex bin have access to 100/20 wireline services. We can also look up the providers who have reported service at this particular location. So we have this provider search tool here. We can use this pin tool to actually drop a pin onto the map, and we'll soon get a list. So based on the data that we have Brightspeed, i3 Broadband, T-Mobile, US Cellular, and Xfinity. And we also have, the technology that they've reported at this location, and also the maximum upload and download speeds. Again, this data is reported by the provider. And if there are instances where this does not align with your experience of availability, that would certainly be a good, example for when you should actually be participating in the challenge process. So those are some of the tools here. So we looked at this, and let's actually go to one of the counties that we have here today. So let's, for this example, go to Macon County and look at what their map has to say. Yeah, so it's essentially the central region, Decatur, and all of that area that has access to 100/20. So we have that. We also have layers on, access for different technologies. So for this example, maybe let's look at where fiber is available. So we see it's most of the southeastern part, so Mount Zion, Long Creek, and some of the areas in Decatur that have access to fiber services in Newburgh and Maroa, Warrensburg. So yeah, there's also different technologies. We can look at cable. So we see there's more of cable available in the county. Looking at DSL, again, cable and DSL much more extensively available than fiber. And again, for each of these layers works very similarly. We have two things. Yeah, so if you look at the 0% of these locations are really, and I would definitely not recommend switching on 2 layers because there's 2 layers of hex bins. We might be looking at different things. So we see this is purple. So there's definitely some DSL that's available. So yeah, 72% of these locations are served by DSL. Because we previously also had fiber turned on, that is why it was giving me like a 0% because that was the fiber reading, and that's not a brown area. So my recommendation when working with all of these hex bin layers, please do just, ensure that you have one layer turned on, because otherwise when you click on it, the statistic could be for a different layer and it could just be very confusing. So that's one tip here. So those are the different technologies. And then we have the density of providers for these different speed tiers. Let's again look at 100 by 20. So we have the legend here for what all of these different colors mean. So the darker shades of blue is essentially where we have more provider options available. And the yellow is where we essentially have just one provider available. So lesser competition in some of those areas could also be a very important statistic as you are talking to your ISPs and planning your networks. So that's about the access tab. Moving on to the next one with grant eligibility. So as I mentioned, this is all the information you need if you're interested in participating in the Connect Illinois Round 3 program. We are still accepting applications until April 1st. So that's still open. So as you're working through this, if you have providers you can partner with who are interested in applying, this could certainly be really helpful. So again, with this is the easiest layer to look at. You wouldn't have to look at unserved and underserved. This just ensures that all the eligibility criteria for Connect Illinois is met. And when we select Connect Illinois grant eligibility, this is essentially all the areas where you can apply for funding. We already have this program has been open for a year now almost. So we have had nearly 4 to 5 waves of applications. Some waves are going to go back to the home extent, turn off eligibility for now. And this is all the project applications that we have received in the state so far. We're going to be having announcements and decisions coming out soon. Our merit review team very recently completed reviewing all of these projects. We have mapping review for the latest Q4 projects running until January 30th. So for these projects, that's still going on. But yeah, decisions should be coming soon. So again, as you're having those ISP conversations, this might also be a good resource to get a sense if these providers are interested in expanding their networks in my community, in my county. So they could also be really good partners to start conversations with. So that's about the grant eligibility information that we have on here. And then the other one we like to look at the statistics. We have some of this shared in the mapping packets that we have also created. One of the good ones I like to see here is the percentage of households without internet subscription. And again, you might want to correlate with this with different parameters as well. So we also have income, we have education and educational attainment and all of those factors. So now, for example, let's just go to Logan County. Okay, so getting a sense of, again, the darker the shade, the more number of households that do not have, internet subscriptions. So we can look at that. There's also the draw tool here. where you can mark specific sections that you might be interested in. So you can just click and add for areas of interest. And I can also work on the size. Yeah, you can work on the size of the area of interest that you're working on, and then maybe toggle on and off between layers. So I was looking at subscriptions, and these are the areas that do not have subscriptions. Could this be something related to income? Going back to the legend, we see that a darker green is essentially higher income. So in these areas, we do have higher income. So it's not that we have low subscription because of a low income population, but it's definitely something to do with access itself. So getting to some of those basic understandings of why we might be seeing certain trends. So this is, again, a good tab to explore, look at those different statistics. Again, it's not always a direct relationship, but it can help you get a sense of what's really going on in some of these areas. So I'm going to turn this off and go back to home. Okay, the next tab I want to be talking about is federal. So we have the one that I'm going to be sharing here is all FCC built out. So that covers ACAM, CAF awards, RDOF awards, and everything. One note here is this includes all areas, whether or not they meet with BEAD requirements. So as we are thinking of BEAD, if that's something that we're really thinking of, this might not always stand. So in the mapping packets that we're going to be sharing with you, we have only identified those federal obligations that meet with BEAD requirements. So, just making that connection, because a lot of the funding decisions and planning is now happening around BEAD, ensuring that you have the most, accurate resources to help you plan. So all of these areas that already have funds that meet with BEAD requirements would not be eligible for BEAD funding. Again, that is up for challenge during the BEAD challenge process. We'll be talking about that, but just as a starting point so that you have a sense of areas that are funded through these federal projects. And then we have the state projects. So the first 2 rounds of Connect Illinois, that's also available in the state projects tab, with round 1 and round 2. And yeah, because I also have this on, I'm going to turn this off. Yeah, so it's all of these blue projects. When we click on them, we get information about the project, the description, what is the technology, the number of units they'll cover, and all of that. And for any of the maps, we also have an export map feature. So, you can directly export as PDF, image, or all of those different things right here. And there's also a share link. So you can just, make all the layers that you want visible, set the extent, and when you go on here, select link options, and you can select if you want to just share the current extent and remember layers visibility. This could be a very good tool to just directly pass on information to, other members of your team. So just wanted to share some of those things. So that's a quick demo of the map. I know there's a lot, so we'll definitely take questions towards the end. And throughout the program, if you're as you're exploring this, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So now in the next section, getting to the BEAD challenge process, we have been having webinars since October. So there's a lot of content. I'm going to be sharing a webpage that actually lists all of those slides and recordings in one place so that, you can, after this presentation today, also take a deeper dive into all of those resources and get a better understanding. But just to overview, this is what the FCC maps have to say about Illinois. This is as of the November 2023 data release, and prior to any accounting for any of those federal or state projects that have already been funded. So we have nearly 4.5% unserved locations, 2.2% of underserved, and all of the others served that are marked in green. So again, we realize that some of this might be overstated. So now is the time through the BEAD challenge process to really ensure that, we help get this map right, because the funding is going to be determined based on what we lock in this map after the BEAD challenge process. So all the locations that would be identified as unserved and underserved after the BEAD challenge process, those are the ones that are going to be eligible for funding. We want to make sure that it goes to the right places. So again, encouraging all our communities, counties, and especially because you're already engaged in the process, really being active through this BEAD challenge process so that, we can get the maps right and have the funding go to the right locations across the state. So an overview, what's the purpose? As I mentioned, we want to make sure the maps accurately represent access to broadband in all locations across the state. And this is going to be important because it's going to inform where BEAD funding goes ultimately. Who can be submitting challenges? So it's local units of government, nonprofit organizations, and internet service providers who can directly participate. And individuals can participate through their local governments and nonprofits. So we're going to be talking about, how you can participate and pre-register so that you can submit challenges on their behalf. And individuals can, again, directly also participate through submitting a speed test. So that is the other way that we're going to take a closer look at in the following slides. What can be challenged? Any location that is displayed on the FCC maps, and we'll have the BEAD challenge map that comes out, which helps consolidate a lot of that information in one place so that everybody has a sense of eligibility. So that's going to be a really good resource, but anything that's on the map and that's not currently correctly listed can be challenged. So when's the challenge process going to be held? Again, we're anticipating that it starts as early as 29th January. This is subject to NTIA approval, hence the asterisks that we have on there. So the dates might shift a little, but if everything goes as per plan, we're looking at as early as 29th January, and it's going to be open for 2 to 3 weeks for all of these eligible entities to be submitting challenges to the state. So a quick overview of the phases. So we start with the pre-registration so that we have a sense of who in the state really wants to participate. This is open now. We encourage, your local unit of government and nonprofits in your counties to register now. It's going to be open even during the challenge process, but it might just take time to register you to the portal and things like that. So the sooner, the better. As I mentioned, there's going to be the BEAD challenge map, which lists all the eligible locations. This is going to be as early as January 2022. Next week, the challenge process opening, Jan 29th. Again, subject to NTIA approval of initial proposal volume 1. We'll then have the rebuttal phase, which is when we've accepted and reviewed all the challenges and we pass that on to the internet service provider to share their side of the story. And if they have any rebuttal information there, this is when they can participate in this. This is again going to be open for 2 to 3 weeks. And then we'll have the state reviewing and making final determinations and hopefully have a final map published in late spring 2024. Okay, so I mentioned pre-registration. So we have a link on here on the slide for how you can pre-register. This is going to be important just so that you can receive most updated communications on the challenge process, the dates, resources, and any updates to when it's happening and how it's happening. And then this will also be helpful for the state to verify if you're one of those eligible entities who can participate in the challenge process and submit challenges on behalf of your residents. So it's a really short, quick form. And we also have some webinars that go into details of information that's required as you're filling it, but it's pretty straightforward. And any help you need, you can let us know. So with respects to submitting challenges, again, we're still developing a few of these resources, and they're going to be more detailed webinars coming out in each of these, but there's 2 ways essentially, and it's defined by whether you have access to the FCC Fabric data, which is essentially a map that has all the broadband serviceable locations on the maps that can be challenged. It's just that, all of this information cannot directly be shared with different entities if they do not have a license agreement with CostQuest, who basically has created the FCC fabric. So we have links and resources here on how to get started. They have a Tier D license for broadband providers and a Tier E license, which a lot of you would be eligible for. So local governments and nonprofits to get access to the fabric, because a lot of the FCC data is, that's available online for download is, through those location IDs and then, the attributes that come with that. So if we have GIS folks on here who want to work with this data, that'll be possible only after you have access to the FCC fabric, because that is how a lot of that data is available. Unless you have the fabric, you don't necessarily get to plot that on a map. And just to overcome that challenge, we realized that not all local governments or nonprofits might have the capacity to work with GIS level data. So we have this beat challenge map also that's going to come out. And so you wouldn't have to have access to the fabric, but then you just go onto the map, select locations. It could be one location, it could be multiple locations, select them, and then, take it forward to the challenge portal, which is again under development. And there's going to be more information about that. But two ways, if you have the GIS capabilities and want to work with data on your end, strongly recommend applying for the FCC Fabric license. And on here, we also have more resources for the application process. And if you get stuck at any point, reach out to us and we can help you just fast track the entire process. So there are different kinds of speed, the challenge types, and I know we're almost 28 minutes into this presentation, so I'm not going to go over all of this. We have, other webinars that get into this, but because speed test is one of the ones that we want to focus on, that is what I'm going to be discussing in the slides ahead. We also have area and MDU challenges. These are not different from the previous slide. It's just that if we have more number of challenges at a particular area or with multiple dwelling units, it just puts the onus on the provider to ensure and share evidence for providing service at those larger census block levels in case of an area challenge. And then in case of an MDU, if it is successfully triggered, the onus is then on the provider to actually share evidence for service to the entire MDU at that point in time. So yeah, how can individuals participate? So this is essentially us moving on to the beat speed test challenge part of things. As we mentioned, they cannot directly participate. It's going to be through their nonprofit local governments or ISPs. And in this case, we have devised a tool where if they participate through this speed test portal, the information goes to University of Chicago, who's going to be aggregating all of that data and then sharing it with the state. So that makes the involvement of all of the other entities as low as possible. And so it's like a low barrier means of participating in the beat challenge process. So what has to happen is individuals take 3 speed tests on 3 separate days. They'll need some information about, their name, address, and current internet subscription that has to be submitted. And again, that's going to go to University of Chicago, and they're going to be submitting a challenge to the state directly if it qualifies. So again, encouraging individuals in your communities to take this test because they're the ones who know, the speeds they get, and it'll be helpful to have that. So what role can your teams play? Use this material, share this opportunity on social media. I'm going to be sharing how we have some of those one-pagers and materials out there that can be directly shared or customized as needed. Print and distribute these. You can post this in community spaces, train members of your community. If there's need for additional assistance or training, again, reach out to us. We can help with that and make that happen as well. And support residents in terms of the information that's needed to file some of these challenges. So in the next few slides, I have more information on how to participate. We also have webinar recordings for this already. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over these, but that's the main idea of how to go about it. We also have one other resource, which is also shared in the mapping packets. It is locations in your communities that have just one of these providers' DSL cable or fixed wireless, and they're represented as served. So these could be some really good target areas for, outreach for the speed test challenge. This is included. We'll also be sharing a link to this so that, there's a search tool here as well. So again, let's look at Perry County, this one. Yeah, so this gives you a sense of, and we have the legend here. So the red is all the locations that only have cable. The blue is that only have fixed wireless. And then we might have some purple areas that only have DSL. So these could be areas that you reach out to, because if they have a successful challenge, these would certainly be flipped to either unserved or underserved. And then, that leads to a successful challenge. These are some of the graphics that I was talking about earlier that can be helpful. It just lists the different the different steps that a resident would have to go to successfully submit a speed test challenge. So again, let's take a closer look at that. We have the landing page for the BEAT challenge process at the Illinois Office of Broadband website. Definitely recommend bookmarking this. And we have here on the screenshot is essentially all the recordings and slides that can be helpful. So if you're specifically interested in, understanding the speed test side of things that I had to skip over, there's the train the trainer section. This is the one that goes through the entire process of how the speed tests work, and then how you can, really speak about it and train your community. So this is the one that I would recommend for the speed test. And now moving on to the mapping packets towards the end of the presentation. So I'm going to invite Kong to, run us through the resources that we have created, and then we'll get to questions.
Thank you, Shabika. So I'll just quickly share the screen real quick. So again, for the mapping packet contents, these are some of the data and information that we used. As Shabika mentioned, we have some new data such as like the list of ISPs, the mobile 5G and LTE coverage map, which is being updated for the last year. We also have data for the federal funding programs that meet requirements, and we also have some two tables from Census Bureau, which is the percent of household without internet subscription and percent of population with without computer in the household. So I will walk you through the folders the packets we created for each county. So for example, in the Logan County, if we click on the folders, we have a list of contents that we have created. Some of them being in the JPEG file, such as for the data and the access by technology stuff. We have like a PowerPoint created for each county. We also have a list of project names in Excel sheet that is for the federal funding that meets BEAT requirements, and we have an Excel sheet for a list of ISPs. Yeah, everything is in this folder for each respective counties. So thank you.
Yeah, and Kong, would you mind actually just running us through one of the presentations so that we can walk the communities through the different maps that we have on there and how, they can use some of the inferences that we have laid out for them that can help with discussion.
Again, let me just click for Logan County being an example. So in the PowerPoint, we have the access to wireline license fixed wireless broadband 25/3. We have several information stating which area in particular in which county is being served or unserved at this speed. We also have a map made for the 100/20 speed. Again, it will show you as Shabika was walking through on the Illinois broadband map. This is the same data from the same map. So, and we also have data on the gigabit speed as well in each county. We have access by technology, which is basically the DSL, cable, and broadband being served, and it is highlighted in each different color of the hex bins. And this is also access by technology, which is a gigabit fiber in the region. This is also the unserved, underserved location based on FCC map. We have the green being in the served and the red and other colors being in the underserved and unserved. For the data is as of June 2023. This is the same data, but it is mainly for the unserved and underserved areas based on the FCC broadband maps data. This is the single provider locations that Shamika was mentioning earlier, showing which particular region is being served by which type of service. So this is the 5G and LTE coverage in the region. The darker purple is the 5G and the lighter pink is the LTE technology. And this is the Census Bureau table that we mentioned. This is as 2801, the percentage of household without internet subscription. As you can see, some of the color coded presented in percentage for each county. This is the total population in households, the percentage without computer in a household in each region. The darker means there's no people not without having any computers in the household. This map shows the federal funded areas that meet the requirements. Again, this is the orange represent AMG auto phase and phase 1, and the blue represent the licensed CAF in census blocks. And this is the FCC registered antenna structures represented in each county. So each county will have the same data and same map being used for each data and each slide. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Kwong.
Shamika, those maps are very impressive. So thanks to you and Kong for that presentation, the work that went into those. That's a lot of hours in a nice, neat packet there. And just know that's just a taste of what you can, the power of these maps, because each of these tools are interactive and you can drill in as deep as you want on those. So thank you so much. That's great. Really, very impressive work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Rita's got, we're going to now, so I encourage people to click on your map packets. You can see that in the chat. And the University of Illinois file storage system, essentially their Google Drive for you. You can have access to that. But I would make sure that you save that, bookmark that email or that address. And we'll, of course, have it in the post-meeting summary as we go. Reed also has a worksheet that you can use just to guide discussion in your groups today. But I encourage you to look at those maps and kind of get a general feel, how does that match up with your reality? So the worksheet is really just a discussion guide for you to get opinions from folks on the team and how it matches up with real life experience and so on. I think you'll learn that these maps have huge value going forward. So I encourage you to maybe assign a couple people to dig in deep on those and become a specialist in the maps. Shabika is a wonderful resource, and keep her email address handy, and we'll include that in the, it sounds like Kong now is as well. So so if you have questions about the mapping, they're usually very available to help. And I'd always encourage in this process to look deep early and gather that information, not get to the end of the process and say, oh, what about those maps they gave us? So this can really be drive great insight for you if you spend time on those. And so look today, but then see if you can find a good analytical person on your team or multiple people to spend some time for the deep dive. With that, we'd entertain any questions about the maps or about the systems or the challenge process. I know the challenge process is a little overwhelming. I would encourage you to decide, maybe this is another person or persons who want to take this on in your group. I'd encourage you not to get consumed by it. There's going to be a lot of money out there, and I think over the next 2 years of spending those dollars, there's going to be, I would suspect there'll be increased flexibility. And this is me speaking, not the state of Illinois, but that as it turns out that, oh, we're going by houses that aren't served. Providers are going to serve those houses, either using those dollars with permission, or they're just going to find other dollars to, the marginal cost of hitting those places won't be very, so focus on the groups of houses that you think are wrong, not on Bob's house down the road. That's my personal advice. It's got no standing with Shabika. She will neither confirm or deny that, but that's my impression of this whole thing. So with that, any questions?
I have a couple questions, and maybe everyone knows this, but this is all kind of new content for me. So just one of the questions I have is, we keep talking about the grant monies and things of that nature. And I know I read that there's 1 billion for the state of Illinois, but typically what are we looking at for a county? I mean, it ranges from what's the low end to the high end.
For the grants?
What actual dollars look, what are the dollar amounts?
You know, they're going to be in the in the millions.
Okay. All right.
Per county.
Okay.
So if you think there's, I guess is with many things. So if you look at, the BEAD dollars, $1 billion for Illinois, most of Cook County is not going to be eligible for those dollars. So this is a rural phenomenon. So, it's, if you think about the number of houses in your community that are unserved today and are eligible for these grants, and if you think about a $15,000 per house grant, I think 10 to 15,000 is what that's going to be.
Okay, that helps. Is this, I know Shabika mentioned too, Connect Illinois and the BEAD Challenge monies. Are those two separate pots of money that are going to be available?
The Connect Illinois dollars are state dollars. They're going to be spending those now in the next, this grant, I suspect that generally they're going to try and spend all that money for this April deadline. And then the $1 billion comes in, or the federal money for the BEAD. But the BEAD will look very close to Connect Illinois.
Okay. And is there a cost for the county? So do you know what I'm saying? Like, so if we receive these grant monies, is there also a matching dollar for the county? Or
usually the grant dollars generally go to a broadband provider, not to the county.
Okay.
And so in most cases, unless you want to create your own broadband network, the dollars are going to go to the owners of the network. And so they generally will need to bring between 25 and 50% of the money for the project to the table.
Okay.
So these will not be 100% grants to the provider.
All right. So that means that provider is putting in the monies to provide that gap funding.
Yes, but now the county may decide to put in some dollars. And the grant programs generally in the scoring, if there's local support and if there's local dollars, the project gets more points.
Okay.
And so it doesn't have to necessarily be a big number or a big percentage, but you can find some, obviously the ARPA dollars are either gone or will be gone, but if there's some other source of funds that you can do, or some kind of non-cash match in terms of helping with rights of way acquisition, easements, minimizing or eliminating permitting fees, other things that the county maybe give up some other kind of matching dollars.
Okay. And the other question that I kind of have, because I tend to work backwards, give me the end goal, and then I'll start at the beginning. Is the actual application available? Like, is it already in print that we can actually see what it looks like? What we would be submitting?
The Connect Illinois grant application is available.
Okay.
The application is not. That's my understanding.
Could you repeat that, please?
So the Connect Illinois grant is open right now.
Okay,
Maybe Shabika, we could put that in the chat, the link to that application.
okay,
And I suspect the BEAD application will look very similar, although because it's federal money, there'll be more pages with more requirements. You know, you have to meet this requirement, that standards, environmental, all those things. But the essence, I think, will be very, very similar.
all right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That was helpful.
Shabika, do you want to talk about the openness of the data files on the GIS maps?
Yeah, yes, I did see that question in the chat. So, what I would say for this is again, as I mentioned during the presentation, because a lot of the, mapping data has switched to the location level through the FCC fabric. I think we'll be able to work with the counties if they have a license to the FCC fabric, because when we download this data from the FCC maps, or even if we, the way we have it for the state maps, it's tied to that individual location on the FCC map, each being referred to as a broadband serviceable location, which has a unique location ID. So when we download those files, it's just location ID and then all the other data. So if we don't have access to the fabric, we don't necessarily know where that location ID falls on the map. So if Macon County in this example has the fabric license, you can download a lot of that data, join attributes, and then, plot maps and verify a lot of this information. But if not, that becomes a little tricky, and you'll kind of have to go based off the interactive maps and just use that as a primary resource. We had links to how to get, the FCC fabric licensing done with CostQuest. So the tier E would be something that a county would apply for. It's an initial sort of quick form that you have to fill out, and being a county, as you're active in this process, it shouldn't be difficult for you to get access. So would highly recommend that you go to one of those links, look at the FAQs, and then fill out that form. It's usually a quick 4 to 5 day process where they review your information, send you the license agreement. You can have that reviewed by your legal and then send it out again. So it's a pretty quick process. If there are any holdups, just reach out to us and we can help fast track the process. But that would be the easiest sort of way to go about this.
Shabika, would you be willing, if maybe in a group setting, if folks from the various counties, their GIS specialists on their team, you would have an individual meeting with them as a group and kind of go through, then you could speak about this at a higher level of sophistication about the process and so on. Would you be willing to do that?
Sure, yeah, happy to do that.
Okay, we'll get that facilitated there. So thanks to everyone. I see somebody thanking Reed, and then he's saying, oh, it's all built, but it's not. So this program, I'm kind of the orchestra conductor, but there's a lot of players here who are here to help your communities. And so feel free to be aggressive in asking for assistance and information. And we want you to be successful. That's our main goal. So don't be afraid to ask for help or additional information, and know that we've got, between ISU and the Illinois Broadband Lab and the Broadband Office and Benton, we've got a great team to help. With that, I'm going to have Nancy open up the breakout rooms, and I encourage you to use the discussion sheet to look at the maps. I encourage you to look at the work on your survey and finalize any kind of information there you need to get to Nancy so we can get these surveys launched, and just have a good, productive conversation. So the meeting rooms are open.
Bill, I'll have to jump to my next meeting, but yes, I'm going to be available for questions through email and all of that. And if we have to get to some of them in the next sessions, happy to do that.
Okay, and then should all questions go to you, and then you can work with your team?
Yeah, I think
Um,
that works. And I think Kong is also going to be sitting in with, I forget which county, but I think they get him as a resource just generally.
Okay.
So yeah, that's going to be amazing. But
Okay.
yeah, we can just get it to me and then we can work as a team.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.